staying in the area of rule changes. We'll go from what the NFL is planning on doing to what the NHL might do, which frankly is a lot less interesting in my opinion because a lot of these are either fairly minor or just outright not going to happen at all. And I mean, it's still an interesting conversation. I actually think I think we should, or no, we do have it on the top here. I think we should start with the thing that absolutely is not going to happen, in my opinion. I think it's already. I think Caleb. I think you pointed out the fact that it won't happen at all. They already
They've
confirmed
already
it.
said it's not
Yeah,
going to happen.
but they were talking about some changes to the 3-on-3 overtime, which mainly being just trying to prevent players skating back with the puck and trying to restart their offense when they have it. Basically, by adding a shot clock and an over and back line, which neither of them makes any sense.
Yeah,
I think the thing that I remember saying when you first brought it up to me, Caleb, was the fact that I think a shot clock would be really interesting for an all-star game. I think that'd be really cool for a game like that. But when it's regular season and like a playoff spot's on the line and it's OT, you don't want to have to worry about a shot clock. Like, that's, I don't know. I don't like it in that sense. I think it's just not very necessary. And over and back line, just, I think that would be the more realistic one, but
yeah,
I feel like that would change just in any way. Either of these would make OT more boring, in my opinion.
yeah.
Like, it would actually take
the
away
point-
from the action.
Yeah, I think to a couple points. I think for the shot clock, because again, these are just potential ideas that people were tossing out in terms of like, how do you fix the problem if you even see it that way of players retreating during overtime, specifically 3-on-3 overtime. And I think the shot clock doesn't work because it's like, because it works in basketball, right? Like the shot clock is a key part of basketball. Nobody could see basketball without the shot clock now. To think that basketball existed prior to a shot clock, like absolutely insane when teams would just hold onto the ball the whole time. The thing about hockey is that it's not the same kind of game. You can't just like, it's
You
a
can't
lot
get
more
away with it.
free flowing.
Yeah.
It's like takeaways and giveaways happen a lot more quickly than they do in basketball, where it's like you're kind of like making your way up the ice. The puck can change hands a couple times, like multiple different times before you get into the zone, right? Like there's a giveaway and then they take it right back. That happens a lot more often than in basketball, where it's normally just like one tipped pass, they get it and they go up the court.
I think, and my argument as well as to why it doesn't work the same way is the fact that in basketball, you really could, if there wasn't a shot clock, you could literally just like throw one guy here on this, like on the far side, one guy. You could play hot potato. Hockey, it is not the same thing at all. Like, I just think the fact that the puck is on the ice and not in the air is immediately a difference. Just the way that defense works in hockey immediately changes that. And for you to be in a position where in hockey it's just common sense to keep the puck as far away from the net as possible. A strategy you sometimes see is ragging the puck on a power play, which is the only comparison I'd make to that. Where it's a strategy where literally, and I I will say that I have done this a few times in my hockey career, but it's where you literally take the puck into the corner and get beat up for 30 seconds and just waste down the power play. That is pretty much the closest you'll get to that. Past that, I can't imagine a world where we see like any sort of shot clock for that, because you just don't see, especially in overtime, it doesn't happen. Like, why would either team be trying to waste the clock? They both want to score.
Yeah, and it would just make it make it unnecessarily complicated too.
Yeah.
Yeah, as would the over and back line, if you want to talk about that too, because I do think that's more reasonable. But I think about this. I think about, if you're looking at, people already don't love how stringent they've gotten on offside calls, right? Where it's like the video reviews where it's just like a little bit of a skate is over the line.
Yeah.
Think about how much more of that we're gonna see with an over and back line, because it just adds another line for people to look at.
Hell, Caleb, a shot clock. Imagine someone scores like half a second after that thing goes off. Not even like 0.1.
Yeah.
Hell would rain.
Yeah. I do think that would be, obviously, if that happens, it would be bad. I do think
The chances
would
of
be
that
at
are
least
lower,
more
I guess.
definitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, the chances of that are lower, and also I think it would be a lot less definitive in terms of. Also, another thing with the shot clock, this just came to mind. If you're shooting in basketball, right, it's like you have to
How
release the
long?
ball before the shot clock.
Yes.
But in hockey, it's like, does it? Let's say you have a shot from the point, and that shot gets released before the shot clock, but then it gets tipped in.
Oh.
Does that still count?
I would
Or
make the
no?
argument. I think what they do with that is the same rule they have for just regular, like any type of regular goal in the NHL, where it has to cross the line before the buzzer goes off. I think that's probably what they do. So it wouldn't have anything to do with the release.
That would be really difficult though in terms of
Yes,
like having
absolutely.
to time up your shot.
It's not.
Before
It's
that?
not the same as basketball though, where like you put a shot in the air at like it takes like 2 seconds or maybe like a second and a half to get to the basket. Like that puck's moving like 100 kilometers miles an hour or whatever. Like it's still a lot
time
quicker.
between.
Oh,
There's
maybe
still
half a
time.
second.
Still, I guess it is a very niche situation.
Yeah.
But it is something that could come up, and that would make all hell break loose. I think it was. I can pull up the score article I had, but again,
I also think
it's important
it
to
would
note that they're
bring.
not going to do this.
It would bring into the question of like what counts as a shot as well.
Yeah, which I don't know if that's another. I don't know if that's anything we want. Like,
I don't know.
If like the NHL wants to get into.
Which I mean, they kind of like if. What happens if they have 2 seconds on the clock or something, right? Like a team has 2 seconds on the clock, and they take a shot, and they miss the net, and it hits the boards behind it. Does the team just get to pick it up in that scenario, or is it like an air ball where it's like whistled down and you get a face off? Like what happens in that scenario? Like how do you enforce it?
As if it is that completely kills pacing too, right?
Yeah,
like a
like
shot
how
violation. How does
or
that happen?
is it like minor or like junior hockey or whatever, like Timbits, where they just place the puck behind the team's goal and let the defenseman take it up? Like that's the one thing about NHL hockey is the fact that they don't have any like in other sports you can give the ball to the other team if a penalty or something happens. The only thing we kind of have for that is putting the face-off in the offensive zone. We don't have a play that automatically gives a certain team possession. That's not how it works. And in other sports, that is the thing. But I think if you were to introduce rules like this, where like a shot clock, for example, or some sort of like enforcing of this, you would have to introduce that type of thing, which I think opens a whole other can of worms on what other penalties and plays would you just give a certain team. Like if a ref makes a mistake, right, on an offside and it's a clear mistake, which sometimes happens, right? Are you going to give, instead of giving the other team a face-off on the spot, are you just going to give them the puck behind their own net? Or whatever the hell it ends up being. Like, it's...
Which
I don't know.
It doesn't matter as much as it does in other sports.
No, and I agree with you. I don't think it does. But I just think in this scenario, if it's a face-off that ends up being what comes from it, that's not enough. Like, the team that forced the shot clock violation should get the puck 100% of the time.
Yeah. And if we want to wrap up the overtime stuff, I think there's a quote from the Stars general manager, Jim Nill, that I think like sums it up pretty well. Where he's like, basically saying like, this is just going to make everything too complicated if we do this. So like, all of a sudden, now I've got the puck at center ice and you come and poke it. Did it go over the line? Did it not go over the line? It's talking about over and back line.
Yeah.
Do we have a video replay on that? It just opens up a can of worms.
It's true.
I said, or we're going to have another clock. It's not worth it.
Would defensive teams just be trying to almost ice it to try and force it over and back? Would the play be to basically defend your blue line instead of defending your goal? Like, at what point does the neutral zone would become basically a kill zone for like any sort of offensive play? Like, I agree with that.
It's an interesting idea, but there's a reason it's not happening because you can sit here like we do and just poke a billion holes in it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we can, like you said, we can move into some other ones. why don't we move into probably what is the other more interesting one that people are talking about, which is the addition of more challenges. Which there's a couple on this list. We can talk about the main ones, maybe a couple other ones. We'll see. But the main ones are related to a puck being shot over the glass in in the defensive zone. Which normally, if it is the defensive player that did it, means that that player is going to the box for a delay of game. But now they're saying that coaches can challenge that to try and see if basically whether or not it got deflected or not, or if there was something or other. I think with this one I agree with it. I find it weird that that wasn't a thing already. Like I honestly would have assumed it was.
Honestly.
Yeah, that's something that I would have thought was already a thing. So it's kind of I'd almost like I like that a lot considering the fact that it clearly wasn't. It makes sense. It's the same thing with the high sticking thing where it's basically you can now try and see if whether they in the Sportsnet article they call it friendly fire, which I think is really funny. But whether or not basically the stick hitting someone in the face was their teammates, which is because it could happen.
Before.
Oh, absolutely, it's definitely happened before.
I've seen it happen before.
Oh yeah, I've hit plenty of my teammates in the face with my stick. Like it happens all the time. Like, I mean. I like both of these. I don't actually even think there's much to talk about more than the fact that it makes sense. I don't know why they wouldn't go through. The only argument against it is just the fact that I know a lot of people don't like challenges just in the fact that they're kind of
slows the game down.
Yeah. I mean, it becomes the same thing as yeah, I mean, it's exactly that. It slows things down. But I guess my argument is the fact that the NHL does have something to kind of discourage it unless it's obvious.
Counteract it.
Yeah, like they do take away a timeout, which, oh no, in the NHL that's nowhere as big as it is in like football or basketball, for example.
But you also get a delay of game penalty.
Do you? Do you know?
Yes.
Oh, I'm dumb.
If you lose a coach's challenge in the NHL,
oh, I forgot that.
Then
you're even more than.
So the interesting thing about these ones in terms of like delay or game or high sticking. So let's say Team A shoots it out in their own zone. They get called a delay of game. They want to review it to see whether it hit someone else's, like the other team's stick, or deflected off something else before it went out. And let's say they're wrong. They are going to, like, this is why I think it's like I love the addition of these. It's because no team is going to do it unless it's completely obvious. Because let's say if they're wrong, now it's a 5-on-3. Because they get two delay of games, one for initiating the challenge and one for throwing
That's
the
true. That's very true.
It's the same thing for high sticking. So let's say this. Let's say someone gets a double minor high sticking. And then the team that got the double minor is like, no, this is his own player. And they watch the replay and it turns out, no, they're wrong. It was indeed a double minor. Now, not only you have a double minor, but now you have a 5-on-3 for half of that double minor.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. I wasn't looking at it like that. But yeah, no, I already was on board with this. I think it's a smart move. I think the idea that it would be slowing down the game only makes sense if you're living in a world kind of like the NFL where you're not really losing as much if you don't get the challenge. I think you just lose a timeout in the NFL. I think that's why I got confused on that one, right?
You do, but in the NFL, the other thing they do to counteract it, I don't know if this is the same in the NHL. I'd have to look this up. But you can only do it a certain amount of times, and if you miss your first one, then you're out.
I think that is the case in the. Oh yeah, you get one. You get one challenge in the NHL. Yeah.
I might have to be fact check on that in both NFL and NHL. But basically,
no,
if you miss
NFL.
Amount, you can.
NFL, I'm not sure either, but NHL, that is right. Yeah, you only get one.
Yeah.
And you obviously get it back if you're right.
Yeah. For all the people who are like, "Oh my God, it's slowing the game down," like come on.
It's kind of not, because it would have anyway, I don't know, it's kind of just a quality of life thing, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, challenges were already a thing.
What would you rather have? Yeah, what would you rather have? Like, the ability to not challenge something, and then have a egregiously wrong call, not be able to, again, I think back to the NFL on this. I think the Saints-Rams NFC Championship game, where there was obvious pass interference on the Rams, and it didn't get called, but it couldn't be reviewed, so the Rams went to the Super Bowl instead of the Saints, right? Like stuff like that happens in sports, and having challenges essentially just gives you a safety net because the referees are gonna fuck up, right? They're human, they're gonna fuck up.
Yeah.
Um, it gives you essentially a safety net to be able to look at the replay. Stopping yourself from being able to look at a review, I think is just plain stupid. And so adding additional challenges to anything in any sport, frankly, I'm all for.
I've
as long as
already
you have those limits on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've already thought for a while that in the NHL, I honestly think that every penalty should be reviewed. Even if it's
agree.
just like, I think that not in the sense that they do it now with challenges. I think that they should just have a bunch of people in rooms with TV screens, basically confirming or basically declining penalties. I think that should be a thing. I actually think it's pretty ridiculous that it isn't.
And not to bring it too much back to the NFL again, but they do that in the NFL, right? Every single touchdown is reviewed.
Yes. I just mean that, like,
it's a very short process where, like, it doesn't take, unless it's something that's already kind of controversial, it gets held up in like a second.
And it also, I will say, yes, that's true as well. I also just think it kind of like, it holds, like you've pointed out, officials accountable, which I think is a big thing. I think the one nitpick in that is just the fact that, and anybody, this is something that I don't even know if it's a bad thing if it goes, but one thing that many officials do, and it's a very known practice, is kind of like, what's the term? Like
a makeup call?
Yeah. Like, what would that do to makeup calls, for example? Where you miss something and just, like, the ref goes, ooh, I should have called that. Do you, like, just, like, and then you pull someone else, basically, like, on something light? Like, that would almost kind of get destroyed, which I don't know if that's necessarily that bad of a thing. Yeah, like,
because then the other thing that would happen is that, like, if you're, I guess it's kind of, it's harder, especially in hockey, on a no call.
Yes.
Like, you'd probably end up catching a lot more of those if you make more things challengeable. It's harder in hockey than it is in football.
I'd argue no. Because I think when you're not on the ice, you don't see as much. Like,
logistically, it's hard.
Especially from, like, a replay booth, you'd have to have a camera on every corner. If you're just watching the game like anyone else, there's a lot of stuff you'd miss. Like, you're only seeing, like, if the ice is this big, right? One second, I'm framing up. You're only seeing this much with the camera. Like, it makes sense when you're just double checking what. It doesn't fix missed calls.
They have more cameras in the situation room kind of thing, though. Like, it wouldn't be. I don't think that would be an issue.
I guess. Yeah, that's true. I guess you could literally. I mean, just think about how many cameras they have set up at a game. Probably like, I don't know, a lot. Probably close to 10. Like, 9, 10 would be my ballpark for that type of thing. Like, I think, I mean, you could literally just, like, feed all those to different monitors, which would be a massive pain in the ass. I've seen kind of what that looks like in a sense, and it is a massive pain in the ass, but it can be done. Like, there is
the NHL, man, they got money.
I was gonna say, and also just the fact that, like, they already do that in, like, the control room. All of those cameras go back to a giant monitor. Like, that already happens. It's just duplicating that, which I don't think it'd be fun to do. I would not want to do it, but I mean, it's absolutely something that can be done.
Impossible.
No, it's not. Yeah. I think I don't know. I don't know enough about that behind the scenes stuff to really give you a definitive answer on how you do it, but, like, it's definitely doable. Yeah. Okay. We can. I forgot that I was the one running this. Goalies can now get penalized for dislodging the net. I was like, I'm just here. Anyway, goalies can now be penalized for dislodging the net, aka the Hank rule. Which, I mean, this is one that I again am very surprised was not already a rule, because this is something that we saw. There is one very famous clip of, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, Henrik Lundqvist. He got hurt on the previous play. The refs didn't blow it down because, I mean, he was still standing up. He still had all of his equipment, and he didn't get a concussion. So they were kind of just like, it was also like 2013, so they were just letting it play. And he gets very mad. All of a sudden it's a 2-on-1 coming back on him. He turns around and just goes, just tosses the net. And I mean, brilliant play. I thought it was very smart. Because I mean, I'm kind of there's a conversation to be had about like whether or not it's smart to dislodge your net in a situation like that. Because I mean, let's say it's a 3-on-1 or 3-on-0 even. Just gonna push that net off. I'll take the penalty, right? Like, and that's a thought I've had in the past as well. I think now that this is officially a rule that goalies will be penalized for dislodging the net purposely. I think the key thing is purposely. Then I think, I think that now we're gonna finally see an end to any sort of like I don't even know what to call it. Like big brain penalty taken. If you somehow, like in overtime, for example, we've seen it before where like it's a 3-on-0. Like, would you be that dumb if you're a goalie to just go like knock off the nets? I don't think you would be. I think that'd be pretty smart actually.
Yeah, something that I think would be interesting is so this happened recently. I didn't know that this was a rule. So obviously dislodging the net as a player has been a penalty, right? You can't go and dislodge the net as a skater. But what I didn't know, and I think this would be interesting in terms of how it plays out with the goalie thing, where you talked about like if you're facing a 2-on-1, like what would you rather have? But this is where I think it complicates things. Is this happened earlier this month? So it was the Devils versus the Ducks. And Frank Petrano intentionally dislodged the net, while the Devils were trying to tie the game in the last 2 minutes, and they blew the play dead, called him a penalty, but it was a penalty shot because it was in the last 2 minutes, which is a rule that I didn't know existed.
So
basically, if it's in the last 2 minutes, it's a penalty shot. I wonder if that carries over to goalies. Is my point.
I think it does. I think you're onto something there because I agree with you. I think it does. But I bring back my point of would you rather, as a goalie in overtime, have 3 players with all your defense, like it's the Vancouver scenario we saw a couple years back where they literally had 10 seconds before another, like I think it was the Islanders defenseman was anywhere near them. Like do you remember that play at all? Like. No, where it was just like you can picture it in your head where like they had an endless amount of time in the offensive zone before being even slightly challenged. And I think if I'm a goalie and I see 3 players coming back, I'm thinking to myself, that penalty shot's looking pretty good right now. Right? Like especially
only one guy.
Exactly, right? It's the math. I mean, I actually think if it is a penalty shot, I understand dislodging the net in that scenario even more. I mean, I'll take one guy coming down the ice towards me over 3. Like shocker on that one. I mean, I don't know. I guess another thing becomes like I think another thing that would definitely make it a lot harder to take that penalty shot chance is if the other team gets to choose who takes the penalty shot, which I think should probably be a thing. Because if it's like the 4th line is out there, 3 guys coming down, and you know that you're going to be getting a shot taken on you by like Ryan Reeves, I'm not worried about it. But if you know that the whole 4th line is coming down at you, right? It's a bunch of guys, not necessarily anyone big, but you're thinking, if I take this penalty shot instead, it's going to be Connor McDavid 1-on-0. Like that's a lot scarier, right? I think that makes more sense.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Whether they get to choose or not. In this Ducks Devils example,
don't think
Jack Hughes took the penalty shot.
Oh, so maybe they do. Yeah, maybe they do.
So maybe they do. I don't know.
Jack Hughes is who I'd pick too. So.
Like if they were to choose, they probably would have. I don't know if like Jack Hughes was
that could have been a
score on this play.
That could have been a circumstance thing, I guess.
He's near the net. I don't.
Maybe you know what they could say. You know what it might be? Maybe they get to choose anyone who's on the ice because I've seen that before.
That could be it. Yeah.
I believe
Which in an end of game scenario, it's not going to be your fourth liners.
That's true. It could be like second liners, like at worst. Like that'd be like the Backlunds of the world.
Yeah. At that point, are the goalies in the split second really doing that kind of calculus, though? Like, that's the thing, too.
Absolutely. If you know any goalies, they absolutely are.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah. There's a reason Lundqvist pushed off that net.
It's true. I don't know. It's true. I don't know. I don't know.
I fully believe. I fully believe that, like, in a situation like that, I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often, honestly.
Okay. Well, it's an interesting rule. Then it's got a little more to it.
It could also just be like a respect thing, where it's the type of thing where you just don't. I honestly think that's mainly the reason it doesn't happen, because there is a bunch of stuff like that in hockey. For example, the Michigan.
The code.
Yeah, it's the code, exactly.
Yeah.
The Michigan's the big one to me, where it's like, sure, I mean, we've seen a couple players be super effective with it, but, I mean, if you can, it's the type of thing where, like, if you show the other team that I know how to lift my stick like this, they're going to show you that they know how to lift their stick like this. Like, that's how it works. Like, I can tell you in the very... Usually the bench does not react fondly to anybody trying that. And I think it'd be the same thing. I think you'd see the goalie getting snowed a lot. It would just result in a ton of fights. But, yeah.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it makes.
You want to?
Yeah, we can move on. We're taking a while.
Talk about the last. I feel like the last interesting one is the one you brought up before the pod.
It just in like
the legs. The legs one.
Oh sure, yeah, we can talk about that one. So they will now be giving out, or with this change. Oh no, this is immediate. Yeah, this one's confirmed. You're right.
This is immediate.
So yeah, no, it took me a second to realize that. Yeah, so this one is confirmed that players will now get a warning and then a penalty for hanging their legs over the bench during the play, which kind of makes sense if you're looking at it just from like somebody who I don't know. I'm trying to figure out the best way to explain this. In my experience, it is a lot harder to jump over the bench fully straight up, which I don't know if that's quite what they're... How long would they have to hang their leg over the bench during a play for them to get a warning?
Probably a decent amount of time.
Okay, because, Because in my head, I'm imagining if you don't state that, if you don't state a time limit, which I think they should, I think they should say you cannot have your bench over the boards without jumping over for more than like 2 seconds, is what they should say. 2-3 seconds. Because then I have no issue with it, actually. I actually think that's a smart move. But I just think if you're fully expecting players to throw both of their legs over when a player's coming like full speed, somebody's going to get hurt, I think. I mean, they're pros, so maybe they're clearly not me. They've been doing it. They're definitely a lot better at it. But I can tell you that it's a lot less fun to throw both your legs over the boards at once. I mean, it's I don't know. I could see We'll see. We'll see what it ends up being.
As someone who's not a hockey player and has never played hockey at any level, I just can't empathize with it as much in terms of
I'm just bad. I was gonna say I feel like the instant response that we'll get in the comments for that one is just like, you're just bad at it then. And I was like, yeah, that's fair. I am just bad at it, but like it's the type of thing where it's the thought that comes It's the thought that comes to my own head where it's just like, it's not a safety thing because you just land on the ice and pop back up, but it's just it's again, quality of life was a word I used earlier, where it's just a thing that people do, and it feels weird they'll be getting penalties for it now, even if, like, the thing we didn't mention either, I don't think either of us brought it up, was why they're making this change, which is the fact that an injury had happened, I think last year or this year, with an official basically getting, I think you said cut, right? Cut by a skate, and obviously you don't want that. You want to avoid that as much as possible, which is why they made this move at all. So in that sense, it makes a lot of sense. But, I don't know. That's where my head goes when I look at it. It's just, I feel like you really have to get specific with this kind of rule, and you have to state exactly how long a player has to hang their legs on the board as the term of you using it. Because I need to know how long I can do it for. Like, let's say, for example, because what I'm thinking in my own head again is, let's say a player starts skating towards the boards and is clearly, you make eye contact, you know they're changing. And then all of a sudden, turn over, and they have to skate back. And my leg's already over the boards at this point, right? Am I being forced to, like, do I have to immediately go, shit, 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 and just, like, pull it back over? Or am I going to get a warning for something like that, right? Like, it almost adds on to, like...
It was... I do think another important thing to say is that I think it is a warning at first,
yes.
right?
Yes, that is what I'm saying, though. Like, it's... At what point... Like, how is this going to work, I guess? I need more details, I guess, is what I'm saying. I'm curious how they're going to do it. I've said that with a couple of these rules, which I'm sure they will make it a bit more specific. But with this one specifically, I think you really do have to give a specific number or something like that. I mean, it's almost like, imagine what it would be like to call a high sticking penalty if they didn't specify that the stick couldn't go above, like, the the net or the crossbar or whatever. Like, imagine if it's kind of like that in
You need a parameter.
Yeah.
Or else you just end up being like the catch rules in the NFL where nobody knows what a catch is.
Exactly. And the NHL does not have that issue that the NFL has, which is just sucking at making rules. But, so I'm not that worried about it. I just think that it absolutely has to be a thing. Because, I mean, it's not a rule that anyone can abuse in any way, but it's just... I don't know. If a team gets a penalty for something as stupid as that, it'll piss a lot of people off.
Yeah, people are gonna be mad.
Yeah, like I almost
saying I'm at least glad they did the warning system
because if there was no warning, holy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
we'll see how strict they are on it.
Yes.
This is something that we'll see immediately.
I also
in this season.
Yeah. No, I agree with that too. Like, is this in any play or is it just in plays near the boards? Is another question I guess I have.
I think in any play, so that
which is
Elliot
even
Friedman
more interesting.
Tweet is
during play.
Straight up says
during play.
Players will not be able to have legs over the bench, or / in play while not on ice. Warning and then bench minor if repeated.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see how it ends up working. I'm sure they'll go into more specifics once we actually see it happen, which we will at some point. Like I think we'll get a pretty good idea of how this is going to work. But until then, it's kind of hard to assess. Because it'll either not matter at all, or it'll matter a lot. So,